A black female billionaire walks into a high-end restaurant but is immediately met with insults from a white waitress and the restaurant owner. Within minutes, they face an unexpected consequence that will change their lives forever. How will this encounter challenge their perspectives and alter their futures? Before we dive into this powerful story of justice and change, please subscribe to the channel and comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Serena Jackson, a well-known black female billionaire, is one of the most successful and wealthy women in the business world. Despite her status, she's known for her humility and simple lifestyle. After a long, grueling day of meetings and important decisions, all Serena wanted was a quiet place to enjoy her dinner and relax. Not needing to flaunt her wealth or position, she chose a luxury restaurant for a peaceful moment. Serena walked into the restaurant looking understated, dressed in a light gray coat and simple slacks. She didn't carry a designer bag or flashy jewelry, just a small purse. She politely requested a table by the window, a spot away from other tables where she could enjoy her meal in privacy. Serena quickly felt comfortable in the restaurant's elegant ambiance. Soft lighting, gentle music, and neatly arranged tables created a warm and upscale atmosphere. However, as soon as Serena sat down, a white waitress named Bethany noticed her. Bethany, a woman in her 30s who had worked there for years, took pride in the professionalism she provided to her clients. But upon seeing Serena, Bethany's surprise and suspicion were evident. A black woman dressed simply in an upscale restaurant like this was unusual for her. She wondered if this woman could afford such an expensive meal. Rather than welcoming Serena with the friendly and professional manner given to every other customer, Bethany gradually showed subtle disrespect. She glanced at Serena's table with a scrutinizing gaze, as if trying to verify why Serena was there. Feeling the unfriendly stares, Serena began to realize she might face an unpleasant situation during her dinner tonight. Yet, as she had so often in life, Serena maintained her composure, unwilling to let her emotions spoil her relaxing evening. Serena didn't know that the dinner she anticipated to relieve stress would soon turn into a significant challenge. A place where she would not only face Bethany's discrimination, but would also prepare for an unwanted confrontation with a biased restaurant owner. Bethany approached Serena's table with a cold expression, her eyes filled with judgment. Instead of beginning with the usual polite greeting, Bethany leaned forward, her tone stiff and somewhat hostile. "I'm sorry, but you may have come to the wrong place. Our restaurant is quite expensive and requires a reservation," she said, implying that Serena might not have the means or right to sit there. Serena looked up, keeping a calm expression and offering a slight smile, but her eyes held a firmness. "Thank you, but I did make a reservation and have the right to be here like any other guest," she replied in a composed yet sharp tone, making it clear to Bethany that she wouldn't be intimidated. But Bethany didn't stop there. Instead of quickly verifying the reservation, she looked at Serena with blatant disdain, as if questioning whether this simply dressed black woman was truly worthy of sitting at one of the restaurant's best tables. Despite Serena's clear statement, Bethany decided to check further to confirm the reservation information, even saying with a chilly tone, "I'll need to see your reservation details just to ensure everything's in order." Serena kept her calm, quietly taking out her phone and showing Bethany the reservation confirmation email without further comment. But in her eyes was a blend of frustration and deep disappointment. Serena was used to these looks and subtle remarks, the prejudiced behavior she'd faced many times in her life simply due to her skin color. Bethany took Serena's phone and examined the confirmation email thoroughly, going over every detail as if trying to find any loophole to validate her doubts. Each passing second made Serena feel more insulted, for it was clear Bethany wasn't genuinely concerned about the reservation's validity, but was driven by personal prejudice. Other customers began to notice the tension at Serena's table, some exchanging curious glances, yet no one spoke up. After a prolonged check, Bethany had to admit that Serena's reservation was legitimate. However, instead of showing any apology or courtesy, she returned the phone to Serena with a cold expression and a thinly veiled remark. "It appears you have the right reservation, but I'm not sure this spot is a good fit for you." That remark was more than an insult. It was a statement suggesting Serena wasn't deserving of sitting there. A sense of anger began to rise in Serena, but she held back, knowing a strong reaction could only escalate the situation. She kept her tone calm yet firm. "I think you should stop this discriminatory attitude and allow me to enjoy my meal in peace." Bethany wasn't accustomed to being confronted so directly and publicly by a customer. The tension between the two became increasingly evident, casting an uncomfortable atmosphere over the area. Other customers looked over, curious but uneasy, witnessing such a scene in a restaurant renowned for its luxury and professional service. Serena held Bethany's gaze, her eyes full of determination, as if to remind her that she wouldn't easily be humiliated by this discrimination. Bethany began to feel pressured by the intensity in Serena's gaze, but, instead of backing down, became even more assertive. Unwilling to lose control of the situation, Bethany tried to maintain her authority. "If you continue causing a disturbance and don't comply with staff requests," she said sharply, "I'll have to report this to the manager." Serena kept her composure, though a deep disappointment welled up inside her. This was no longer just a server being skeptical or disrespectful. Serena was fully aware that Bethany's behavior stemmed from biases related to her skin color and appearance. Acknowledging this only strengthened her resolve not to back down. "I'm not causing a disturbance," Serena said, her tone low and resolute. "I'm merely asking to sit quietly and enjoy the meal I reserved, like any other customer." The tension between them began to draw the attention of surrounding diners. Some glanced discreetly, while others exchanged uncomfortable looks, disliking the unease in the air. Anxiousness spread, though no one dared to speak up, perhaps out of fear they'd become Bethany's next target, or simply out of reluctance to interfere in a situation that didn't concern them. Bethany felt she was losing control and grew angrier as Serena stood her ground. She moved closer to Serena, her smirk more evident. "You may not understand the standards of our restaurant," she said with a challenging tone. "We always ensure that every customer fits the level of this establishment." Serena looked straight at Bethany, unflinching. "I understand the standards here perfectly," she replied with a tone that was both calm and firm. "And that includes treating all customers with respect and fairness." Momentarily taken aback by Serena's firm response, Bethany hesitated, but rather than retreat she decided to escalate, asserting her authority further. "I'll call Mrs. Charlotte, the owner, to handle this," Bethany announced, thinking the owner's presence would force Serena to yield. Serena was unfazed. She responded simply, "Please go ahead." She knew she hadn't done anything wrong and had no reason to back down from this injustice. With a cold and determined gaze, Serena gave everyone around her the sense that she was more than an ordinary customer. She was a strong, dignified woman who wouldn't easily be subdued. The surrounding glances, initially curious, gradually turned into admiration and respect. But the tension didn't subside. Instead, Serena's resolve only made Bethany feel more out of control. Bethany quickly left, and within minutes, Mrs. Charlotte, the restaurant owner, arrived, striding quickly toward Serena. Charlotte, a middle-aged white woman with a sharp look and an air of authority, approached Serena's table, her face filled with clear annoyance. Dressed in a formal business outfit with a cold demeanor, she looked Serena up and down with a judgmental gaze, as if Serena's presence in her restaurant was an affront to the restaurant's image. Without any greeting or basic courtesy, Charlotte looked directly at Serena and spoke in a cold, authoritative voice. "I've heard you're causing problems with our staff," she said, emphasizing causing problems to imply that Serena was a troublemaker who didn't belong there. "Perhaps this restaurant isn't the right place for you," she continued, her tone laced with a mocking edge. Serena looked directly into Charlotte's eyes, keeping calm and dignified despite the growing anger within her. "I'm not causing any problems," Serena said, her voice cold but composed. "I'm only asking to be treated fairly, like any other customer. I made a reservation and just want to enjoy my meal without being insulted or treated differently." Charlotte showed no empathy, seemingly unwilling even to listen to Serena's explanation. Her gaze flashed with contempt as she nodded slightly to Bethany, affirming the judgment she had already made. "Bethany was right to protect our restaurant's image," Charlotte said, deliberately ignoring Serena. "We can't allow just anyone to detract from the elegance we've built here." The disdain and contempt in Charlotte's words deeply hurt Serena's pride, but she maintained her composure. She stood up, not allowing herself to sit in a position of weakness. Looking directly at Charlotte, Serena kept a firm tone. "So, what is the standard of this restaurant? Only serving people you find suitable and deserving?" Serena asked, her voice clear, each word challenging Charlotte's prejudice. "If that's true, then I'd say this restaurant is not only disrespectful but also openly discriminatory." Momentarily taken aback by Serena's refusal to back down, Charlotte felt a surge of anger. Instead of showing leniency, she believed she needed to assert her authority further. Her gaze cold and face stern, she replied in a decisive tone. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone we feel doesn't fit our restaurant's environment," she said, as if ordering Serena to leave immediately. "This is a high-class place, and we expect every customer to meet the standards we set." Serena paused, her gaze steady. She looked around, noticing the judgmental and curious glances of the other patrons. The restaurant's atmosphere had become tense. No one dared to speak, but she could sense the silent tension filling the air. Serena understood that no one around her would stand up for her, and that realization only solidified her resolve. Unable to contain herself, Charlotte suddenly grabbed a glass of water from the table and threw it at Serena. The cold water splashed onto Serena's face and clothes, a public, blatant, and vicious act of humiliation. All sound in the restaurant seemed to stop. Diners stared in shock, some covering their mouths, others gasping, unable to believe what they'd just witnessed. Serena stood there, briefly feeling the cold water seeping into her clothes and face. The humiliation was not just from Charlotte's action, but also from the look of contempt on her face. Yet, instead of letting her emotions take over, Serena simply took out a handkerchief and wiped the water from her face, revealing no weakness or surrender. Her eyes held a steely resolve as she looked back at Charlotte, a gaze both fierce and dignified. Serena's voice cut through the silence, strong and commanding. "Your actions aren't just disrespectful but outright disgraceful," she said, each word clear and piercing in the now silent atmosphere. You may throw me out of this restaurant, but you will pay for what you've done." Charlotte, maintaining her arrogant stance, shrugged and replied nonchalantly, "Then leave. We don't need customers like you here." But she failed to realize that her actions had crossed a line of decency and respect, and that the woman standing before her, Serena, was not a guest who would easily overlook or accept this humiliation. Serena looked around, noticing the silent indignation in the eyes of some onlookers, but no one dared to stand up for her. She understood that she couldn't rely on help from those around her, who were likely afraid of losing their comfort. But she didn't need them. She knew she would seek justice for herself, and that resolve was evident in her gaze. Lifting her bag gently, Serena nodded at Charlotte, a slight smile crossing her lips. "Rest assured, I'll go," Serena said with a calm but meaningful tone. "But I assure you, you will be held accountable for today's behavior." Serena turned and walked past Bethany and Charlotte with a dignified stride, her head held high, showing no sign that the situation had affected her pride. As she left the restaurant, the silent crowd behind her watched, filled with awkward and uncomfortable looks. But Serena knew this wasn't the end of the story. Within her, a plan was forming, not just to reclaim justice for herself, but to ensure that no one else would have to endure the humiliation and discrimination she had just faced. And she quietly vowed to herself that this was only the beginning. As she walked out of the restaurant, Serena carried with her not only the hurt and humiliation inflicted by Charlotte and Bethany, but also a fierce determination to turn her outrage into concrete action. She didn't let her emotions overwhelm her judgment and immediately began planning her next steps, knowing that to achieve real change, she needed to act carefully and strategically. Serena got into the car waiting for her outside the restaurant, taking a deep breath to regain her composure. She opened her phone and quickly contacted Michael, the head of the legal department at her company. Michael, familiar with Serena's decisiveness, instantly understood that something serious had happened upon hearing her sharp and determined tone. Serena began recounting the entire incident, from Bethany's contemptuous remarks to the humiliating act of water being thrown at her by the restaurant owner. Her voice remained steady but powerful, revealing her clear intent to let no aspect of the incident go unanswered. "Michael," she said with resolve in her tone, "I want a full investigation into this restaurant and their treatment of customers. Reach out to anyone who may have been mistreated there and gather detailed evidence. I want to make sure this becomes a lesson for anyone who thinks they can freely insult others based on personal biases." Hearing her words, Michael didn't hesitate in his response. "I'll get started right away, Serena. We'll put together a plan and ensure this doesn't happen again. You have my full support." Serena nodded slightly, satisfied with Michael's response. But she knew that this incident was more than just handling a personal situation for herself. She wanted to effect real change in the service industry, particularly in how restaurants and businesses treated their customers. She recognized this as an opportunity to drive reform, not only for this restaurant but potentially across the industry, where discriminatory behavior would be replaced by respect and fairness. Upon returning to her office, Serena called an urgent meeting with her leadership and legal team. In the elegant conference room, her employees and managers arrived one by one, wearing serious expressions, fully aware that Serena wouldn't summon a meeting like this without reason. As she recounted the incident, they listened, astonished and indignant. "I want you all to understand," Serena began, her voice strong and unwavering. "This is not just about a personal issue involving me. This is about fairness, respect, and dignity that everyone deserves when they enter a service establishment." She paused, making sure everyone was focused, then continued. "I don't want us to address just this single incident. I want us to set a new standard for service and customer treatment. I want every restaurant and business in our network to ensure that everyone is welcomed and respected, no matter who they are or where they're from." The room fell silent, and then slowly heads began to nod, with eyes showing determination. They understood that this was an opportunity to not only protect Serena's honor, but also to uphold the values of fairness within the entire corporate system she had built. Serena outlined specific steps, including mandatory cultural awareness and professional conduct training for all staff. Everyone, from servers to restaurant managers to senior leaders, would participate in training to ensure all customers are treated with fairness and respect. She also directed the legal team to begin a thorough investigation, gathering complaints and feedback from customers who had previously visited Charlotte's restaurant. Serena didn't want to just address the surface of the problem. She wanted to make sure that anyone who had been unfairly treated would have a voice and receive support. "We will not let this incident pass without creating meaningful change," Serena declared firmly. "I want us to make sure that not just I, but no one else, has to endure what I just experienced. This is the time for us to stand up and do what's right." And in the meeting, Serena contacted the company's communication and PR department. While she didn't intend to turn the incident into a public scandal immediately, she wanted to ensure that, if necessary, the story would be communicated fairly and truthfully. She wanted to protect her image while also ensuring that anyone who had witnessed Charlotte and Bethany's wrongdoing would have the opportunity to speak up if they were willing. Late in the afternoon, Serena sat alone in her office, gazing out the window thoughtfully. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that she would face many challenges. But she also understood that this time she wasn't standing up just for herself. She was standing up for those who had been underestimated, discriminated against, and hadn't had the chance to fight back. To her, this was a mission far greater than seeking personal justice. She wanted to create a system where everyone who entered would feel respected. Serena picked up her phone and sent a brief yet meaningful message to her team. "Tomorrow, we begin the investigation. I want every detail thoroughly collected. Nothing should be overlooked. This is not just a personal matter. It's a chance to change the service industry." A faint smile appeared on her lips as she looked at the phone screen. She knew that from this moment, she had started a significant battle, a fight to reclaim rights, fairness, and to bring about change in the system she believed could be widespread. She wouldn't stop until the humiliation she endured became an unforgettable lesson for anyone who had ever, or would ever, discriminate against others. Serena knew this journey would be full of obstacles and pitfalls, but with a determined gaze and a heart burning with justice, she was ready to face it all. Leaning back in her chair with a deep breath, her bright eyes revealed that Serena was no longer just the woman humiliated in that restaurant. Now, she was a symbol of determination and the resolve to bring about change, not only for herself, but for all who had and would face injustice. The next morning, Serena's team was already in action. Her legal and management departments, along with investigative specialists, threw themselves into the work of gathering information and evidence related to Charlotte's restaurant. They weren't only investigating Serena's case, but also broadening the scope, seeking out any previous complaints from customers who may have experienced discrimination at that establishment. The goal was not just to address one isolated incident, but to uncover a possible systemic issue and lay the foundation for sweeping reforms. Serena specifically requested that the investigation be conducted transparently and thoroughly. She didn't want to overlook any detail, no matter how small, to ensure that those who had suffered injustice would have the chance to be compensated and protected. The legal team quickly contacted customers who had visited Charlotte's restaurant, individuals who might have witnessed or experienced similar incidents, inviting them to share their experiences. Some were initially hesitant, fearing their voices would be ignored or dismissed, but upon learning that Serena Jackson was behind the investigation, they opened up. Over a few days, testimonies and evidence were gradually gathered. Various stories began to emerge, some about subtle discrimination, judgmental glances, and contemptuous words. Others were more severe, involving clear cases of being treated differently solely based on appearance or background. The investigative team found that many people had been asked to leave the restaurant without justification, while others endured disrespect from the staff. These stories were like pieces of a puzzle, revealing a deeply ingrained problem of discrimination within Charlotte's restaurant management. Serena sat in her office, closely monitoring the progress of the investigation. She realized that the behavior she had endured was not just an isolated incident, but part of a discriminatory pattern that had existed for years at this restaurant. This realization strengthened her resolve to not only seek justice for herself, but also to bring real change to the service industry. After gathering enough information and evidence, Serena decided that the next step was to implement reform measures within her own company and issue a formal statement to reaffirm her commitment to the values of fairness and respect. She called a company-wide meeting, including senior leadership and staff from various restaurants within her organization. In the meeting, Serena presented the entire case in detail, avoiding no aspect, from the discriminatory actions of the waitstaff to Charlotte's public insults. "We can't build a company just to make a profit. We must build a culture that is fair and respectful to every customer," Serena declared, her eyes shining with determination and conviction. "Every one of our employees, from management to service staff, needs to understand that no one has the right to judge others based solely on appearance or ethnicity." Serena outlined specific requirements. All employees in her restaurant chain would be required to attend cultural awareness and anti-discrimination training. These would not be mere theoretical sessions, but would include practical exercises to help staff understand the impact of their actions and words on customers. She emphasized that this was not optional, but mandatory. Those unwilling to embrace change would have no place in the company. Serena also called for a reformation of the customer complaint and feedback process. She wanted a system that ensured every complaint, no matter how small, was investigated and resolved fairly and transparently. She was determined to leave no detail overlooked so that no one else would have to endure the feeling of injustice she had experienced. Serena believed that listening to customers and addressing complaints was the best way to improve service and uphold the company's image. When the meeting ended, the company's leaders and employees left with a spirit of determination and commitment. They understood that Serena wasn't just speaking about change, she wanted to see real action. And this wasn't just beneficial for the company, but also for the customers they served. Serena wasn't only fighting for her own rights, but was laying the foundation for a service culture that people could trust. In the following weeks, Serena received progress reports from the investigative team. The results showed that not only she, but many other customers had suffered similar discrimination at Charlotte's restaurant. Serena decided she would not let this matter pass without leaving a memorable lesson for Charlotte and her team. Instead of immediately involving the media, she chose to send a legal notice directly to Charlotte, demanding specific reforms and a public apology to the customers who had been wronged. Upon receiving this notice, Charlotte initially reacted angrily, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. But when Serena's legal team released evidence and stories from customers, public pressure and the threat to her reputation began to shake her. She realized that her arrogance and discriminatory attitude were not only damaging her restaurant's reputation, but could also jeopardize her career if the case became a media focal point. Finally, under significant pressure from the legal team and the strong voices of affected customers, Charlotte was forced to admit her mistakes. She issued a public apology, promising to change her management practices, retrain her staff, and expressed remorse for what had occurred. For Serena, this apology wasn't the ultimate goal, but it was a clear sign that change had begun. She recognized that her persistence had made a difference, not only in her own life but in the way others viewed the importance of fairness and respect. At the end of a long day, Serena sat in her office, feeling a sense of relief but not complete satisfaction. She understood her work was not finished and that this was only the first step in a long journey to change the entire industry. But, in her eyes, determination still gleamed, and she knew she would keep fighting until no one had to endure what she had experienced. While Serena continued to push for reform within her own company, the incident left a strong impact on Charlotte's restaurant. Faced with legal pressure and Serena's serious reform demands, Charlotte began to realize that her complacency and discriminatory attitude were not only causing individual issues, but also threatening the overall reputation and credibility she had built. Reluctantly, Charlotte was forced to hold retraining sessions for her entire restaurant staff. This was a mandatory requirement Serena had stipulated in the legal notice, but Charlotte knew that failure to comply would further tarnish her restaurant's image in the eyes of customers and the community. Despite her initial reluctance, Charlotte joined the training sessions with her staff, including Bethany. Bethany, once proud of her years of experience, initially felt hurt and angry when required to participate in cultural awareness and anti-discrimination training. She believed she was doing the right thing by protecting the restaurant's standards and saw no reason to change. However, as she continued attending the training sessions, Bethany began to feel an unsettling realization. Real-life stories about unconscious discrimination and specific exercises forced her to confront her deep-seated biases. Biases she hadn't even realized she had. During a group discussion, a colleague shared a story about how a black customer was treated disrespectfully at another establishment and how that customer must have felt. Listening to this, Bethany suddenly remembered the look in Serena's eyes when she had demanded a ticket check and treated her with contempt. That look had shown hurt and disappointment, but also dignity. Bethany began to understand that her actions weren't just fulfilling her duty, but were a serious affront to another person's self-respect. As she participated in more exercises and listened to stories from colleagues and customers, Bethany gradually recognized the insensitivity in her actions. What she once saw as upholding standards was actually deep-seated discrimination and disrespect. She felt ashamed to realize she had contributed to an unfair environment and had hurt others because of her own prejudices. From her initial anger and resistance, Bethany shifted to a sense of regret and shame, understanding she needed to change, not just to keep her job, but for her own integrity. Meanwhile, Charlotte began experiencing a shift in her own mindset. Initially, attending the training only to fulfill Serena's legal demands, she realized that her restaurant was not the friendly and fair place she had once thought. Charlotte reviewed negative customer feedback, complaints she had previously dismissed, and recognized that her arrogance had caused significant harm to her restaurant's reputation. During the training, she was forced to listen to others' stories about experiences she had never considered. In one practical exercise, Charlotte was asked to play the role of a customer who was discriminated against and to experience the feeling of judgment as she entered the restaurant. Although the scenario was hypothetical, it deeply impacted her. Charlotte felt the humiliation, the hurt, and the sense of being undervalued, all feelings she had previously dismissed as overly sensitive when hearing customer complaints. She realized she had never truly understood the experiences of her customers, and that discrimination harmed not only individuals, but also shattered customer trust and loyalty to her business. As she participated in more sessions, Charlotte gradually realized her mistakes in management and her attitude toward customers. She began to feel regret over past decisions and recognized that without change, her restaurant would never fully recover its image. Once proud and stubborn, Charlotte began to open up to feedback and was determined to create a fair and respectful service environment. For Serena, receiving reports from the investigative team, she knew that not only herself but also the entire restaurant system of Charlotte's was experiencing real change. She felt a sense of satisfaction, not from the downfall of those who had wronged her, but from the awakening taking place. Her determination had sparked a transformation not only in Bethany or Charlotte, but also in the restaurant's working culture. Months after the training programs ended, Serena unexpectedly received a call from Bethany. Bethany's voice held regret and gratitude, something Serena had never imagined hearing. Bethany admitted she was wrong, that her actions not only hurt Serena but also tarnished her own image. She apologized for what had happened and thanked Serena for not only seeking justice, but for giving her the opportunity to recognize her own mistakes and learn to change. Charlotte, after going through the training and witnessing positive changes in her team, also sent Serena a heartfelt apology letter. She admitted that her actions were not only disrespectful, but also rooted in unconscious biases she hadn't known she held. Charlotte expressed her gratitude for Serena's persistence, which helped her recognize her flaws and encouraged her to change for her career and for herself. Serena read these letters with a sense of peace and satisfaction. She realized her efforts not only helped improve the service industry's environment, but also touched the hearts and minds of those who had once hurt her. People like Charlotte and Bethany, once symbols of discrimination and arrogance, had now changed, becoming advocates for the values of fairness and respect she had fought for. She understood that change doesn't always come from the strongest measures, but from helping others recognize and understand their mistakes. That held far, greater meaning than any retaliation, and for her, this was the most meaningful victory. Months after the events, change began spreading throughout Charlotte's restaurant system. From new hires to long-term employees, everyone was required to attend training on cultural conduct and anti-discrimination. As a result, a fresh, positive atmosphere emerged, not only among the staff but also in how the restaurant treated customers. Charlotte, once someone who believed that customers had to fit her standards to be served, had completely changed. She didn't just participate but actively led training sessions, sharing personal experiences and the lessons about fairness she had learned from the incident with Serena. Restaurant staff saw the difference in Charlotte's attitude, transforming from a proud, stringent owner to a leader who listened, understood, and was ready to stand up for customers when needed. These changes not only restored Charlotte's trust with her employees, but also created a friendly space where everyone felt respected and valued. Bethany, too, was no longer the server with the skeptical, judgmental gaze. She became the first to welcome customers of all backgrounds with genuine openness and respect. After the lessons she went through, Bethany not only changed herself, but actively helped her colleagues understand the impact of their actions and words on customers. She shared her experiences, recounting Serena's story as a valuable lesson, reminding everyone of the importance of fairness and compassion in their work. These changes quickly attracted the attention of customers and the community. Many customers noticed the difference in service at the restaurant, from small details like welcoming smiles to the way requests were handled. Those who had previously felt uncomfortable due to staff's subjective judgment now felt welcomed and respected. Positive feedback began to appear on review sites and social media, helping to rebuild and even enhance the restaurant's reputation. Soon after, Charlotte's restaurant system was recognized as an example of positive change in the service industry. Customers from diverse backgrounds began choosing this restaurant, not only for the quality of food, but for the establishment's commitment to creating a fair and respectful environment. For many, the restaurant became more than a place to enjoy a meal. It became a safe space where they felt valued. Seeing the positive impact of these changes within her system, Charlotte decided to expand the training programs and even introduced policies encouraging employees to engage in community activities, fostering understanding and empathy across social groups. Charlotte realized that change had restored her reputation and brought tremendous personal value, creating a space everyone could be proud of. Although Serena no longer directly participated in the restaurant's transformation process, she followed closely, quietly pleased by the progress she had helped to inspire. Thank you letters from Charlotte and Bethany, positive reports from the restaurant system, all were proof of her perseverance. She knew that she hadn't only fought for her own justice, but had also created a profound impact on how a business treats its customers and employees. Serena's story quickly spread, becoming an inspiration for other businesses in the service industry. Many business owners began rethinking their employee training and corporate culture. The change Serena had sparked created a ripple effect, transforming an entire system with positive values. In management and corporate culture seminars, the story of Serena's struggle and Charlotte's restaurant transformation became a prime example of how perseverance and faith in justice could bring about real change. Not stopping there, Serena continued supporting organizations that promoted diversity and fairness in the service industry. She funded training programs on cultural conduct, helping other businesses understand the importance of treating customers fairly, regardless of their background, race, or nationality. These efforts made her a symbol in the service industry, a powerful woman who dared to stand up and replace outdated biases with values of fairness and respect. With the positive changes taking place, Serena not only achieved her goal, but also built a legacy of compassion and fairness. She went beyond reclaiming justice for herself and turned her personal experience into a source of strength, a guiding light for others. She knew that her small action had the power to create a big change, and she continued to believe in the strength of perseverance and determination. Reflecting on her journey, Serena smiled, feeling satisfied and proud. She knew she had not only brought change to a single restaurant, but had helped shift perspectives and practices across the entire service industry. She knew that the values she had nurtured would continue to grow, spread, and make the world a more fair place, bit by bit, one person at a time. Months later, Serena was invited to an event honoring individuals who had made positive contributions to the community. In a room filled with bright lights, people who had witnessed and been inspired by her story gathered to pay tribute to her courage and determination. Serena stepped up to the podium, her gaze glowing with pride, yet warm and humble. She looked around, seeing the faces listening with respect, and knew that her story had become a symbol of something much greater. This story isn't about one woman fighting for her own justice, Serena said, her voice calm and strong. This is a story about the power of perseverance, about how we can turn pain into a force that changes entire systems. Each of us deserves respect and fair treatment. We shouldn't fear standing up for our rights, because by doing so, we aren't just defending our interests. We're also upholding the values society needs to thrive. Applause echoed throughout the room, but Serena only smiled gently. She knew she had helped drive a wave of change and that many others would continue the journey she had started. In the audience, she saw Charlotte and Bethany, once the cause of her pain, but now, through change and repentance, had become allies in the mission to build a fairer world. At the end of the event, Charlotte approached Serena and shook her hand, her eyes full of appreciation and gratitude. "Thank you, Serena," she said. "Thank you for not abandoning us in our mistakes, but helping us to change." Serena responded calmly, "Change isn't an end. It's the beginning of a new path. What's important is whether we're willing to learn and improve. I believe we can do it." Leaving the event, Serena felt lighthearted and at peace. She knew she had completed her mission, that her story had left a mark not only on a restaurant or company, but in the hearts of those who had listened and felt the power of courage and perseverance. In her heart, Serena knew that the values she had fought for would live on, continuing to spread throughout the community, far beyond the walls of a restaurant. She had built a legacy of fairness, respect, and unity that she believed would continue to inspire others, helping society move closer to a fairer and more humane world. With a satisfied smile and faith in the future, Serena stepped into the light. She had shown us that the power of perseverance and courage could turn any challenge into an opportunity for change. From discrimination, she had sown seeds of fairness, and from hurt, she had built a legacy of respect. Her story reminds us that each of us can be a beacon, illuminating the path for good values, turning the world into a place where everyone is respected and treated fairly. If Serena's story inspires you and you want to continue hearing meaningful stories about fairness, love, and hope, please subscribe to our channel. Together, we can spread positive values, drive change, and build a better world for everyone.